Hi, everyone. Good morning. It's Carol Williams with Williams Immigration, and we are back for another Monday morning of Beyond the Soundbite. In Beyond the Soundbite, Monday mornings, we talk about what's happening in U.S. immigration and how it impacts you, and maybe different strategies that we see, different things that we see are going on with immigration. So let's dive right in. Today, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about the Biden immigration bill that was finally introduced into Congress. And before we get to that, I want to do one super quick legislative update, and then we will dive into that Biden bill. So a couple months ago, I had let you all know that DHS had issued or published, I should say, a rule that would essentially allow increased biometrics at all ports of entry for folks that were not U.S. citizens. I kind of predicted that there might be some privacy concerns there. And the Biden administration has reopened the comment period for that rule because of privacy concerns. So the new comment period for that rule, where anyone in the public can write into the government and say, hey, here are my thoughts on this rule, for, against, somewhere in the middle, have suggestions. They read them all. And the new comment period ends on March 12th. So I did want to bring that to your attention. That rule is still winding its way through the process. There were some serious privacy concerns, and so they have reopened the comment period to March 12th. So if you have any comments on that, feel free to write into DHS about those. So I want to dive into the proposed immigration reform that was sent to Congress. I believe it was last Thursday, so it's still pretty new. It is huge. It is over 300 pages. So I am not going to go over all 300 pages. I definitely am not going to even really scratch the surface, but I do want to go through a high-level look at some things that I think you all will find important. So we're going to dive right in. So there's a lot going on in this rule, so let's go. So there are new sections. The government has said, hey, let's add some new sections. We want new categories of individuals to be eligible for green cards. Once they're issued green cards, that gives them a very clear path to citizenship. So those new categories of individuals, they've actually created a whole new category of people, and those are called lawful prospective immigrants. And you would get your lawful prospective immigrant status, and then that would give you a path to getting a green card. The Dreamers would also have a very clear path to getting a green card and then citizenship, as well as those individuals in TPS or temporary protected status and our agricultural workers. Understand for each and every single one of these four categories, there are very specific criteria that must be met. You don't want to be online with me all day as I go live, so I'm not going to go through each individual category and what all of the criteria are, but understand that this proposed piece of legislation provides a path to obtaining a green card and then obtaining citizenship to lawful prospective immigrants, which is a whole new status, Dreamers, those individuals in TPS, and our agricultural workers. The proposed legislation also touches on our southern border and everything that has been going on our southern border. So it calls for more training of CBP and ICE agents when they are encountering individuals that are coming in through our southern border. It calls for establishing minimum protocols for individuals that are in ICE custody, including, but certainly not limited to, medical care, sanitation, food and nutrition, access to clothing. These should be sort of basic, but it calls for guidelines to actually be written down, so that no one can say that they didn't know. Also calls for a specific carve out for guidelines when interacting with and dealing with children who have come up through the southern border and are in ICE custody. The proposed piece of legislation also calls for increased agency cooperation when it comes to catching, detaining, and prosecuting immigrant smuggling rings that target and prey on refugees. So it'll be interesting to see where that leads. The new proposed legislation also includes sections on reusing family-based green card numbers, as well as reusing employment-based numbers. So when I talk about reusing, there is a cap to the number of green cards that can be issued based on a family application or based on an employment-based application. So when the Immigration Service gets a new file, they say, okay, we've got a new file, we're going to process this, we're going to check that off. So now we know we've got one less that we can approve. Well, if that application never gets approved, then that number, according to this piece of legislation, will then be put back into the pool of numbers that are eligible. So that means that more individuals that are currently waiting in line for their green cards, whether they have filed for their green card based on a family member or based on an employer, now would be able to get the benefit of those numbers that were previously counted, then not approved. And so those numbers now languish, no one's using them. So with this new piece of legislation, all of those unused numbers would be able to go back into the system and be eligible for reallocation. And so that means we would have more individuals getting their shot at getting permanent residence here in the United States. Huge provision would be to repeal the 3 and 10-year bar for individuals who remain in the U.S. past their lawful stay. Currently, if individuals remain in the U.S. Past their lawful stay for 6 months or for a year, they are looking at a 3 and 10-year bar from returning to the U.S. if they leave the U.S. So that is an enormous piece of this new proposed legislation. So again, I want to repeat, this is proposed legislation. You will hear me say that throughout, up and until we have something final that is passed. But right now, what I am explaining to you is proposed. It is what the Biden administration wanted to see. And it was finally introduced this past Thursday. We are looking at, also in this new legislation, the inclusion of what we're calling permanent partners. So think a common law marriage with a same-sex couple. The key factor here is that the immigrant is unable to get legally married in their home country. Right now, individuals who are part of a loving same-sex couple they have a really difficult time trying to get that immigrant over to the United States on a family-based application because their home country does not recognize or authorize legal marriage between same sexes. So this particular provision is targeted specifically at those couples. And I think if we can get that passed, that will really allow those same-sex couples, or one is from a country that does not legally recognize same-sex marriage, to move to the United States and have a green card and then have a clear path to citizenship with the person that they love, even though their home country does not validate that love and allow same-sex marriages. Another provision of this new law is that it would increase the diversity visa numbers from the current 55,000 up to 80,000 per fiscal year. So the diversity visa is a lottery-based system for individuals who come from countries where historically it has just been harder for them to either have a family member or take advantage of employment-based green card applications. So we have the diversity visa. It's currently at 55. This new piece of legislation is looking at increasing that to 80,000. We've got, in this proposed piece of legislation, we've got some really serious employment-based green card provisions that have been proposed. The first is to eliminate country-based caps. Right now, there are limits on employment-based green card applications that can be approved based on your country of nationality. This new proposed legislation is looking at completely doing away with country-based caps for employment-based green cards. They are also looking at adding 30,000 green cards for the EB3 other worker category. And that is a category of individuals who are where the position requires less than a bachelor's degree. So we're looking at some more of our skilled laborers, but where the job doesn't particularly require a bachelor's degree. So that really is the current administration's attempt to kind of balance, and as well as I think recognize that not all jobs require a bachelor's degree, and those in our current immigration system is really weighted heavily towards jobs that require a bachelor's degree or higher when it comes to applying for a green card. So if that gets passed, that will be wonderful news for individuals in these skilled trades. The legislation, proposed legislation, is also looking, I think, to balance what can happen in our economy. We know that we see ups and downs. We know that we see ups and downs in terms of employment. We also know that we see ups and downs in terms of specific sectors of employment and specific industries. So I think as a way to kind of balance that, we are looking at a provision in this proposed legislation to establish a process that will allow the Immigration Service to, when necessary, limit the issuance of EB2 and EB3 green cards when a specific job sector is looking at a high level of unemployment. So EB3 positions are those that require at a minimum a bachelor's degree. EB2 positions are those that at a minimum require a master's degree. So that is, I believe, the current White House administration's ability, or they're looking to balance, the issues that we are currently going through in the economy that we have been through before. And sometimes certain sectors are hit harder than others. So we'll see if that particular provision survives this piece of proposed legislation, or whether it gets tweaked or changed in any way, shape, or form. We're also looking at a new provision that calls for a pilot program for regional economic development. So that would be 10,000 visas, 10,000 green cards targeted to positions if they can show that that position will help regional economic growth. So it doesn't necessarily have to help the entire country. That's not the high standard that we're looking at, but it's got to show that it can help regional growth. So are we looking at, very little guidance on how we're defining regions, specific geographic region. So that, will certainly take a little, I think we'll have some tweaking occurring to that piece. But again, I think that is the Biden administration's take on trying to balance encouraging employment-based immigration, but also looking at and being very aware of how our economy sometimes goes up and goes down and is a little topsy-turvy. So we'll see how those specific employment-based immigration pieces come out in the final version. DHS and DOL, under this new provision, may issue rules that favor higher wages in the H-1B lottery. So again, I think that's another bit of balancing that the current White House is trying to do. F1 students under this new proposed rule, regulation, would have dual intent if they are here on a full course of study, if they're here on a full-time program. So dual intent is super key because it means that an individual does not have to show that they have a home to return to and that it is their intent to return to their home country. So under the new proposed legislation, as long as a student is here in F1 status and they are on a full course of study, they don't have to show that their intent is to go home. So that's pretty big for a student population out there. Another section of this proposed legislation is that H-4s, that those are the dependents of our H-1Bs, they can go beyond the limit of 6 years and have work authorization. I know a lot of H-4s that are out there that would find this to be amazing if it is passed. We've got a significant amount of H-4 talent that is not currently eligible for work authorization. So that would be great for them. Also, the Biden administration is aware of the backlogs and has, in this particular proposed rule, built in a piece whereby if you are here in the U.S. in lawful non-immigrant status, which is a temporary status, you can extend your stay in 1-year increments if 1 full year, 365 days have passed since your perm application or your I-140 was filed. And you can continue to extend in 1-year increments until a decision is made. So that's pretty big. The processing times right now that we're seeing with DOL and with USCIS on green card applications is quite lengthy. So to allow folks to process that extra, in 1-year increments would be great. So we've got Elena Anderson DeLay says that I'm really excited about the dual intent provision. It will offer students much more flexibility for their future. Elena, I 100% agree with you. But remember, this is only proposed legislation that hit Congress last Thursday. So that is really amazing that I think it's in there. So we'll have to see if that survives into the final piece of legislation. But thanks for your comment, Elaine. I'm actually really excited about that provision as well. The other thing that we are seeing in this new proposed piece of legislation that was introduced into Congress last Thursday are various programs. I will not go through all of them, but various programs to reach out and promote citizenship as well as helping refugee families. And so, we talk a lot about promoting citizenship and getting people here in the US, and it's such a hard process. And it is sometimes very, very difficult, especially for our refugee populations. And so these various programs to reach out to them and to offer them assistance, I think will definitely help them integrate into the US a little bit more and integrate into their communities so that they can really hit the ground running and feel comfortable and be, and contribute the way that they really want to contribute. So it's just one more step in their personal American dream. So I'm personally pretty excited about that. There are provisions to waive the English and history requirements for older applicants to the United States. So we'll see if those provisions survive into the final round. As well, this particular proposed piece of legislation talks about waiving the English and history requirement when someone is applying for U.S. citizenship if they have completed 4 years of U.S. high school and received a diploma. So the sort of the thought process behind that is that they have gone through 4 years of education in the United States. The questions on the naturalization application are at indeed a high school level. And so realistically, folks that have gone through 4 years of a U.S. high school diploma and gotten their high school diploma in the U.S. have already studied much more than our current citizenship test is asking them to do. So again, this is just proposed legislation. It was proposed last Thursday. We'll see if it survives. So those are the provisions that I wanted to talk about with you today. And so to be respectful of your time, there are many, many more. Again, this proposed piece of legislation was introduced into Congress last Thursday, and the piece of legislation is over 300 pages. So so I did my best to kind of boil it down and synthesize it for you in our talk this Monday morning. If you have any questions about the proposed legislation, feel free to drop a comment or question in the comment section below. And if you're watching this on the replay, feel free to put in #replay. I will most likely be doing some more posts, perhaps short videos, some just text, to really kind of help everybody understand and flesh out what's currently winding its way through Congress. But we do have the official Biden immigration bill has been proposed. It is sitting in Congress. And so I wanted to give you all a quick summary of some of the highlights that I think at least my viewers are super concerned about, questions that I get every day. So I am Carol Williams. Happy Monday morning. This is Beyond the Soundbite, where we talk about what's hot, what's going on with immigration the previous week. So I devoted all of today about the new piece of legislation that is winding its way through Congress. Please remember, this is only proposed. None of what I have talked about today is final. So I will be following this closely, keeping you updated as things tweak and morph. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at my office. I can be reached at 954-903-1337. Everybody have a wonderful week, and I will see you back here next Monday for Beyond the Soundbite. Bye.